Thank you so much for staying tuned. It's all about the impact of China in globalization. You might have heard about the Chinese. You might have heard about Xi Jinping. You might have heard about the exploit China they are doing globally and where it is making the Americans to feel so much uncomfortable. Well, my analyst really want to really throw more light on this. I'd like to start my introduction by introducing the one sitting very close to me. Yes, a political analyst, an economist, a political affairs commentator, an impactor of knowledge. You can call him a lecturer if you really want to call him that, but like to go by the word teacher, whatever. Join me, welcome Destiny Owobor. Welcome to the show, Destiny. I appreciate your comment.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you've seen the other man. Yeah, an astute politician, an astute businessman, and academia. He likes to read. If I let me use the word love, he loves reading. I wonder why that is. When you talk about local and international politics, he is well grounded. Join me, welcome Honorable Ehi Igareba. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me. Good afternoon, viewers.
All right, here we are. It was like the Chinese coming out from where no one expected them to come out from to become a force to reckon with globally. People are now liking them to the phoenix, dies, get burnt, and come back alive again right from the onset of Chairman Mao. I don't know. Right now, here we are. It's like when the Chinese sneezes, many parts of the world catches cold. Even when the leading forces don't want to admit it, it's like they are catching cold, so to speak, talking about the likes of the US, the UK, you just name it. How did they get so powerful? How did they get so strong? How did they get how am I going to put it now? I'm looking for a word, humongous. Yes, that is the word I was looking for in the global terrain. Let me start off from you, Honorable Ehi.
Well, the Chinese people have used a very unique global strategy that it's hitherto not been used in terms of global influence, dominance in economics and political situations. You know, they've been the first country to have attained such high, prestige in the international community, or being a powerful nation that will not deploy force. They are respected even without fighting. You know, the Chinese have instead decided, firstly, they counter-penetrated a lot of countries where they repatriated a lot of technological strategies for which they improved upon, and in some cases they've used imitation to perfection. You know, they've imitated technologies that they repatriated from other climes and eventually perfected those. They use systematically, they've sent in students where other countries sent in spies to spy on technology. The Chinese sent in their students into your classrooms, your manufacturing sector, where they transfer or repatriated knowledge back to China. And so what you have today in China is almost a cocktail of knowledge from different parts of the world. You know, so if you look at thriving technologies today, Chinese perhaps have the most advanced rail system in the world. You know, they've gone ahead of everyone in terms of artificial intelligence, to the extent that the new warfare the whole world is anticipating will have to do with artificial intelligence, where there will be cyber interactions between countries, cyber dominance, cyber manipulations, and the Chinese have gone way ahead of the other countries. If you look at rail, if you look at solar energy development, which the whole world has been craving for, clean energy sources, the Chinese, without making any noise, have gone way ahead. So I think what they've done is alien to the world in the sense that, you know, they are the first country in the world that I can say are powerful but yet don't go to war.
Are powerful and yet don't go to war. I'm going to come back to it, really expand shades on that. Destiny, he has given a fine foundation for this. This course is all about Chinese impact in globalization. Take it up from there.
Yes, the Chinese influence was predestined by a lot of fundamentals. Like economists would say, it was a sleeping giant that rose. China's population is 1.6 billion. The world's population is 7.5 billion. 1 out of every 6 living persons is a Chinese. What do you expect? 1 out of 6 human beings is a Chinese. Population-wise, they have it. Secondly, China's global trade contributes 10% to the global trade, according to 2017 data. The global trade of the world was about $90 trillion. China contributed 10% of that. That's 2. And thirdly, technology. You cannot dispossess technology from their success story. You see, China went into technology, the use of technology, education, especially science and technology education, to emphasize productivity, creation. It also coincided with the time of the Asian tigers, when the Asian economies were picking up strong, developing their sectors. So China, from 1978 and the reforms and the influence of globalization, has been able to play a big role in the world economies. As I speak to you right now, China is the biggest producer of steel in the world. By far, not a small margin. By far. The second closest to it is Japan. The gap is very large. And steel is a very important resource. It's very versatile. You can use it for a lot of things. So the world economy, one way or the other, depends on China. So one thing I can take away from the influence of China in the world is, one, like my colleague said, education. China was one time known for stealing technology and other things, because it's like a covert operation of sending millions of Chinese to the West, to school, and go and learn their software technologies. And then they came back to China and set up small corporations. As we speak right now, in every field of human endeavor, China leads. We are going to the 5G generation of network now. China is leading that. Space, China is dominating space. China is dominating agriculture. As I speak to you, China is the biggest manufacturing company in the world. In fact, it was even called the workshop of the world. So it's not surprising to economists, because, like we said, with all those parameters, they have one of the most educated workforce in the world. They have surplus labor. Tim Cook, Apple head, recently said something. If you call for certain scientists in America, you want to employ people, 5 Americans will apply. Chinese, 2,000 Chinese will apply for the same position. Not because they are experts. They are experts. So when you have 1.6 billion people, and over 800 million of them are high-tech, very educated, very skilled people, the cost of labor drops per person. And so it is actually profitable for companies to move to China and set up their factories, manufacture, and simply send it back to their countries to buy, assemble, and buy it there. So China is the capital of the world in terms of workshop. China is a major producer of anything you can imagine. China is spreading its influence to the rest of the world. As I speak to you right now, China is invading Africa, invading the Middle East and other parts of the world. They are really improving their influence. What is not to fear for a country that is just in 40 years was able to achieve what took 200 years for other countries to achieve? So it's a miracle. It's a great miracle. Yeah.
A miracle, a great miracle. Is it really a miracle? And is it that China is leading specifically in every facet of human endeavor?
Yes, I don't want to call it, yeah, from a religious point of view, it's easy to say it's a miracle, but I think it's a result of careful and very strategic planning. You know, people who have put a lot of effort into generational planning over time. They knew where they were going, they knew what results they were expecting, and they knew the strategies to deploy. And of course, because national planning have to do, you know, is critical to whatever every country and any country would become. And firstly, you have to have a national or international prestige, or have national prestige within the international space. And when you have national prestige, that is a weapon, it is a tool on its own. And today, China is is prestigiously seen by other countries to the extent that, look at the rail sector, for instance. Today they have over 18,000 miles of railway transportation, more than any other country in the world. And they just came into rail transportation. Hitherto, they would have people come from the United Kingdom, from Germany, from most of Europe to come and build their railway technology. But strategically, they had Chinese who even naturalized to become citizens of other countries. It was a strategy. These were carefully sponsored by the Chinese government to stay within the system and educate themselves with a view not to just transferring knowledge, but bettering the knowledge that they were bringing. So they've done it to perfection without anyone, more or less catching the word off guard. And now, when you go to Chinese schools, they are not the conventional schools. They are not teaching maths, geography, physics, English. They have specialized schools. From very early ages, there are children that are trained for agricultural purposes. They don't do general schools anymore in China. They are looking out for interest even in elementary schools, and they develop those children along those paths. We have a situation where almost the first 15 years of maybe 12 to 15 years of our education is almost like general knowledge that we are seeking. No, they are not doing that. They are thinking, they found out that the mind of the child is so fresh and young, and that if you direct correctly at that early age, you can produce almost a genius if you identify what their areas of interest are, areas where they are gifted. So the Chinese have done that to perfection. Then you have to look at, of course, like my co-discussant has said, you have to look at that population issue. It's huge. But again, if you have a population that is uneducated, it becomes a burden, like we have in the northeast of Nigeria. If your population is they become a burden on the country, it becomes a disadvantage. But when you have an educated population, they serve as an economic weapon for your country. It's very difficult now to be a global giant without having substantial interest in China, without doing business with China. I mean, what are you going to produce that the Chinese are not a part of? Then you look at, this is, for instance, Nigeria is the giant of Africa, for instance. In all of our critical infrastructures that are under development at the moment, the Chinese are involved. Are you talking about the rail in Abuja? Are you talking about the Lagos-Ibadan Express? All of the big things we hope to do? Are you talking of the Lagos International Airport expansion? The Chinese are everywhere in our lives, in our national lives. If you move to England, there are highways that the Chinese have brought over to modernize and toll over time. So if you go to even Zimbabwe, that you are going to think is not economically viable, they are there. But the strategy they deployed is different from what other people. Chinese make sure they give you turnkey projects. They are not going to let your engineers work alongside their engineers. They are not going to let your specialized personnel work with them. They can use your unskilled laborers, but not your specialized laborers. And if the Chinese are giving you loans for any project as part of national planning and strategy, they will ensure that you must award that project to a Chinese company on their terms. So there is no competitive bidding. So when you take $1 billion loan from the Chinese to build your railway, you are not going to get quotes from Germany or Russia or the United States to find out how much will be used to build a railway. No, you have to revert back to Chinese companies who will give you Chinese rates that you must accept as part of the terms of the loans that you are assessing. So with that, they've tied all of the developing world to their apron strings. We can't move too far from the Chinese.
We can't move too far from the Chinese. Should one be scared right now, or should one be appreciative of the fact that we have a country that really wants to take the world to the next level?
Yes, we should, to be proactive, it should not inspire fear. It should first of all inspire, the country should look at what they did if it was possible. In 1960, China was an agrarian society, poor by all standards. And then they made reforms. And then, before you knew it, by 1990, they were a global powerhouse. What a sensible country should learn from, how did it work for China? What did they get right? Why? Nigeria also is a sleeping giant. By geography, by population, by everything. With 201 million people, according to current estimate, Nigeria has is a large market for any country, any product, whatever. Two, it has the demographics of Nigeria, 400 languages, 256 ethnic groups, allows that country to have a lot of ideas, naturally. What we lack then is that basic critical element, education, investment, not general education, special transformative education, the type of education that China went into. We have technology, software engineering, research science, astronomy, advanced chemical production, steel engineering. These are not physics, chemistry, mathematics. These are advanced engineering, soft skills development, and things like that. So our education should be engineered to be more pragmatic. Our kind of education right now is generalistic, is you just give people degrees and they become philosophers. Chinese are not philosophers. They are pragmatic people. They understand skills. They know how to make one or two things. So we need to develop our basic engineering industry. So it shouldn't inspire fear. If the United States was seen as the world power in the last 50 years, although a silent world power for a very long time. And then China just came from nowhere. It was believed that the US economic power will make its influence, democracy, felt all over the world. So democracy spread to majority of the world because America was the leading power. And then China was able to demonstrate something that economists did not predict, that a communist government can be capitalist. This is what we mean. Capitalism was theoretically predicted on the basis that capitalism and democracy move together, capitalism and freedom. But communist systems, a central government, now developing a superpower, was unheard of. So we now see China, which is antithesis to America. America is a free society. They talk about freedom, and then they're a very rich society. China was able to prove that communist countries, when well organized in an industrial setting, can develop. And as I speak to you, China is large, as powerful as the United States in every area, except the military. Of course, America is still far ahead in the military. But China is super. What should we learn from it in Africa? We should study the greats. Like somebody said, if you want to be a great man, study the greats. Who are the greats as we speak in this world now? One, the United States. Two, China. We should look at what works for them. One thing is common between both of them. They have highly advanced workforce. Highly advanced. They did not get there by singing and dancing, the things we emphasize in the third world. What they got there into production. As I speak to you, America was a major manufacturer before China came in. Now, America is moving to the information age. They've left manufacturing. Manufacturing only accounts to less than 10% in America's GDP. But China is the headquarters of manufacturing now, where America has moved on. What Nigeria should do, we should also try and move away from our agricultural-based society to manufacturing. Why? It is in our best interest. One, the whole of Africa, Nigeria constitutes about 15% of the African population. So if we are a great manufacturing hub, Africa prefers to patronize Nigeria than patronize the West. It's expensive to do it that way. So you see, for example, Dangote is setting up a refinery right now. That refinery will produce about 600,000 barrels of refined products. Naturally, our first customers will come from Africa, our neighbors. So if we are able to take this region, just like China took the Asia Pacific, Japan was a power, but China, as we speak now, the whole Asia revolves around China. The whole North America revolves around the US. The whole Western Europe revolves around Germany and others. Africa does not revolve around anything. We're in limbo. So if Nigeria is able to benefit from such development, Africa will revolve around us, so we become regional powers. The world is better in a democratized regional power bloc, not where we have two power blocks in one end of the world, and then the others are just guinea pigs feeding their egos there.
All right, now you brought in the US, and of course you talked about something, excuse me, about Chinese being able to combine two systems, capitalism inside communism.
Yes.
And like what he said is like unheard of. How do you think they were able to come up with that? Is it leadership? Is it the mastermind of Xi Jinping or Chairman Mao? That goes to you. Hey. Hold on, no, just take note of your point later. You let it out, okay?
Yeah, I wanted to rephrase the point so that it's not combination of capitalism, communism. It's actually capitalism and freedom, then communism and industrial growth.
It's the same thing.
It's
just the same because it's like both of them are working hand in hand, of which North Korea couldn't practice that. They tried, they couldn't. So.
Well, for me, I think it tallies with what has always been my concern for Nigeria and perhaps most of Africa. You know, when we heard of the term capitalism and we heard of democracy, we just swallowed those concepts hook, line, and sinker. We didn't think of domesticating those concepts such that we have our own peculiar way of practicing those economic and political terms or situations. For instance, if you look at the emerging country, the United States, during its developing times and when the democracy was developing in the United States, not everyone could vote. Not everyone could vote. America had to attain a certain level of literacy. It was strategic. They planned to attain a certain level of literacy before they said, now, universal adult suffrage. Everyone can vote. They needed people who could understand the issues. First, they needed developed minds that could understand the issues that were being canvassed at elections before the votes. Now, what do we have in Nigeria? The illiterates elect for the literates. For you to get elected, majority of the electorates are people who don't understand where you are going or what you're saying because they are illiterate largely. They can't comprehend. So, we did not take a look at our electorates. What quality of electorates do we have? So, when you say there is a debate on TV, who are those watching? What's the population of the voting public watching? How many people are on? That's why social media can't determine the result of Nigerian elections now, because the bulk of the voters are not there. They are not educated, they are not internet savvy. You know? So, what the Chinese understood was that at that time, when they were taking off, they did not have the requisite education amongst their population for everyone to participate in the political process. And they knew the political process will always determine how far the economic process will go. Therefore, they restricted political activities to a selected few. That is communism, actually. Those were to determine for society the direction they should go. Once they got that right, they liberalized the space. How did they liberalize the space? Massive investment in education. Massive investment in education, because they needed to bring the educational level of their citizens at par with their ambitions of global domination. But where is different from Nigeria today is this. When they went for education, they didn't go for the 1960 type of education like we are trying to practice in Nigeria now. You know, United Kingdom is trying to play catch-up in the world. But if you ask, what is the average model, educational model being practiced in Nigerian schools now? They are trying to bring the British system that is trying to play catch-up globally. Nigeria is too shy and timid to take a peep into the future, to know what kind of education we need to move ahead of even the United Kingdom. We are too timid to imagine that we can be better than the United Kingdom. We are too timid to imagine that we can develop an educational system that is better than that of the United States. That is what the Chinese did. They were bold enough, they were courageous enough. That is what goes on in the United Arab Emirates. They don't want to be like you, they want to be better than you. Nigeria wants to be like someone else who wants to leave their present situation. So the Chinese understood that for you to have prestige amongst the committee, the global international committee of nations, you needed to be a world beater at whatever you were doing. You needed to be number one in areas of human endeavors. You didn't need to be like another country. You didn't need to spy verbatim and transfer technology. It means you are always going to be behind other countries. And that is not enough to attract wealth to a country today, because wealth have moved from natural resources to technological introductions that affect all of humanity. So Nigeria, we don't have, for instance, today, there is no university specialized in software development. So how are you going to catch up with the world? There are no secondary schools that are just internet-based for young minds to explore. We are still doing physics, chemistry, biology, geography, even history. All of the knowledge a professor of history can transfer to you are on Google. You don't need to spend 4 years to get those information anymore.
You're meant to cram it.
Yes, they're on Google. All the information they could ever give to you. Certain courses should be struck off now, and new ones introduced into the system.
All right. Now, you talked about transfer of technology, and America have been very, very stern when talk about the transfer of technology against China, saying they are fond of doing that in the sense that they breach copyright laws.
Yes.
What do you feel about that?
I think China is not the first country to steal technology. All technology was stolen at one point. You know, so I mean, it's an ego thing. America wants to be on top. They don't want China. If you say somebody stole your technology, even in America, corporations steal technology from each other. So the stealing of technology has been localized a long time ago. It's just that it's just crossing borders.
But it's a crime.
In a significant way.
But it's a crime.
It's a crime. But who punishes a country for such crimes? We have the World Trade Organization. They have dispute resolution mechanisms there. And then before you say a country stole your technology, you must first of all emphasize which part of the technology. Technology is a gamut. It's not one thing. If you look at your cell phone, for instance, it takes about 600 little technologies to make a cell phone. Okay, the design is a technology. The softwares inside are technologies. There are components that come together. The world is becoming too big for you to say one. Technology, what do you mean? Do you mean device or specific technologies? That's the question. You know, recently Samsung and Huawei, they were fighting.
They're fighting.
And then the one says the other one copy. They went to court, and then the court concluded that both of them have right to the same, the sleek design is what they were fighting. The sleek design. And Apple said they've already patented it. Huawei says they also have their own. But it's obvious that Apple started the sleek design thing. And then how do you locate, at what point do you say a country stole your technology? Okay, photography, for instance, was invented by the French and some other European countries. It happened simultaneously. Just different aspects of photography. So nowadays, what we talk about is technology transfer. You know, it's just that the transfer has been going this way, US to China. And Americans haven't been able to see how they stole Chinese technology. And that is reasonable because America is rich. It's a superpower, so they were off guard. China was the one that wanted to develop. If we want to develop, for instance, we have to steal technologies naturally from the developed countries. Because if you want to start technology, you have to start from number 1, for instance. And then you want to, people are in level 9, you are in level 1. The world trying to move from, okay, what do you want, okay, we make spoons, for instance, now cutlery. And then you want to start from the basic spoon, you want to go, no, that's not what you do nowadays. What you do is this, you study the modern spoons, and then look for a way to play around it. The era of trying to develop your own technology is long gone. Countries don't sit down to just try and invent one brand new thing. That era is gone. What countries do now is they study systems of other people and tweak the system to produce a compound product. So Nigeria, as a country, when we talk about stealing of technology, that one is another argument. It's between America and US and China and some other things to deal in the courts. But one thing is certain. Technology is not the exclusive preserve of any country nowadays. All countries have their contributions to the technological space. The internet, for instance, is credited to England, an English professor who invented the internet. But the internet itself, as a word, is a set of technologies. It's just that he was the person that created the protocols to enable you to network them. So why you give him the credit? What does the credit? The credit does not generate money for England. The benefits of the internet is spread across the world. Although we can only remember that one person brought these technologies together. So what Nigeria needs to do as a country, we cannot say we want to go and steal technology. What we can do is we need to study technology and get into the technological space. And this is what is happening now. In the value chain of any product, you don't need to be able to make a full product. For instance, you can specialize in the car, for instance. You can specialize in creating only the tires. Or you can specialize in creating a part of a switch. That's what countries are doing now, a part of a switch in the car. And so you don't need to know how to make a big car for you to say you are technologically advanced. If you go to China, you see some companies, they are only specialists, they only produce one small screen, one flat screen for one major product. So Nigeria needs to, at one point, what I've studied from all economies that are advanced, they have one thing in common: technology. And so the modern world is driven by technology. And that means countries must make a concrete effort, concrete determined effort to leverage on their population and harness the power of technology to develop, because there's a connection between economics and politics. China recognized that you are not going to have political power unless you have economic power. Let me put it this way: the person who plays the piper dictates the tune. So if they notice that the superpower status of the United States and other countries were engineered by their wealth, the one who speaks is the one who has resources. So China said, okay, we don't need to be like these people, like my colleague said. We don't need to be like these people. We just need to have economic power. And so what did they do? They started making massive investments. Massive investments in technology, trying to advance products. As I speak to you now, I told you, steel, America was the superpower of steel before. Now China they produce 5 times more steel than the US. 900 million
metric
tons of steel, China. And America is producing 160 million. Imagine 900 million, 160 million. America taught them the steel whole thing, but now they took it far. They are stretching it. So what they are doing now is China is trying to take over in fact, they should be a world power given their population. They should. I told you it was some destiny to be fulfilled.
All right. Now you second time using this word destiny, and that should
They should.
Okay. Now you just hold on. I'll come back to you.
Yes.
Now, all these factors, is it enough for America to start shivering, start hating, or embrace the Chinese so they can work together?
No, I don't think the United States is shivering, but obviously there are going to be reactions, especially that you look at the President of the United States, and because of the economic system they practice, every statement he makes is capable of helping or dismantling the U.S. stocks and their companies. So he makes certain statements just to help buoy up the U.S. stocks of companies, to give the impression that something is being done. Like my friend has said, at that level, there isn't much you can actually do. You can threaten sanctions, but there will be counter sanctions. So there isn't much you can do. It's just like the issue of the Russians, using some the spy that got killed in the United Kingdom.
Oh, nerve gas,
using the nerve gas. At the end of the day, it came to naught, because at that level, you can't do much. But what I know the United States would do, because these are countries that don't joke with national planning. They don't joke with national planning. They are forever planning. Now they must be finding every ways. They have people at NASA who are trying to do the best ever possible in terms of going to space. They have people in the automobile industry who are trying to produce the best automobile ever made. They have people in the aviation industry at Boeing who are trying to do the best airliners that you can ever find in the skies. So they are going to go back, put on their thinking caps and say, look, the Chinese, if we look at perhaps like steel production, if they have gone too far, there's no point chasing after them. What do we not do in another direction to take the shine off the prestige they already enjoy in terms of being the dominant country in steel production. Then they are going to invest in technology, they are going to improve in another direction, and before you know it, the world is going to hear something from the United States. So that's what happened, competitive challenges at that level, with a view to remaining the number one. Of course, it's severely under threat, and if certain parameters were to be, taking a look at critically now, you can arguably say the Chinese are number one in certain areas, and the United States, but for military might. But again, the Chinese are not inferior in terms of military might, but just that they are not going to fight. They are not going to fight. The United States, for instance, in the last 10 years, wasted over $3 trillion on just executing wars that had no direct bearing on the United States economy. Imagine if that was plunged back into the economy. You understand? So the Chinese, if they had that same $3 trillion at the time the United States had it, imagine what they did with $3 trillion. So that is the difference. They are not going to fight, but they have a standing army. They are going to go into strategic alliance with people you are not too friendly with, like Russia, like North Korea. They are going to be subtle on North Korea. They are going to advance certain advantages to them and have North Korea have a go at you from time to time. So while North Korea keeps you busy, Russia keeps you busy, the Chinese just keep moving. So the US have to also evolve a new strategy. I mean, they are too big to shiver now. So they're going to evolve their own strategy. And I see that coming soon. Because if you look at the unemployment ratio, it's been like the lowest in over 3 or 4 decades in the United States. So it shows a lot of work has been done within, in the American economy. But now, now that they've stabilized, don't forget we're coming from a recession not more than 10 to 12 years ago, just when President Obama came on board. So now that that is behind them, they've stabilized the home front. Of course, you are going to see them making new, advances in terms of technology globally and trying to dominate again.
All right, now from what they said, the United States is too big to shiver. Then why is Donald Trump blowing hot when it comes to China?
Yes, we must understand America is a heavily democratized country, and the populist movement. Recently, there's this populist movement that the voters used to count a lot in America, but the voters were the elite voters. But now the voters that count now are the average voter on the street. Trump came on populism, the idea that some people are marginalized in society. And America was hurt by Chinese actions. Like I told you, America used to be a great manufacturer, and then China rose. If China produces 900 million steel meters, for instance, and that means the supply of steel in the world is very high. Abi? If that is so, what do you think will happen to the price of steel? It will go down. Americans profit from manufacturing and selling steel at high prices, but China has flooded the market.
All right, now let's talk about China flooding the market with steel, and America is like trying to level the playing field. You can just take it up from there. Yeah, continue from there.
Yes. So what that means is that the middle class, there's a middle class in America, the blue collar class. The workers, they don't have jobs. They've been laid off. The factories, the steel companies are closing. All of them are relocating to China, to Mexico, and to other countries where the cost of labor is low. So Donald Trump came on the altar that he's going to restore America back to greatness, make America great again. And then make us an industrial hub and things like that. But there's a problem. America has moved away from production of manufacturing and construction. America has gone into services. 80% of America's GDP comes from services, high-tech services. But Trump still values the brick-and-mortar America, where America was an industrial manufacturing hub. The current hub is China. And the reason why companies are going to China and all these other countries, Mexico and others, because the cost of manufacturing there is low. And these people, the problem is that when they finish manufacturing in those countries, they come to sell to Americans. So the middle class in America, those people, the blue-collar people who work in factories and others, they don't have jobs, and yet, which means America is not exporting jobs. So Trump's agenda is to try and relocate most of those jobs back to the US by forcing China to play at competitive points. What China is doing now is more like subsidies. You come to China, you make things cheap, you flood the market with it, and then Americans will be forced to buy cheap products, and then they don't have jobs. So Trump's strategy is more of a short-term strategy, because in the long term, what matters is what you are able, the influence you are able to have in the world. But in the interim, it is working so far. According to reports, America has gotten the lowest unemployment rate in 40 years under Trump, and most of those companies are coming back to America, come and produce in America, because Trump is forcing China to raise its prices so that it will be at par with American prices, so that the world will be really a business place. But as it stays now, China is selling cheap products everywhere in the world, and people are preferring Chinese products to American products. This will hurt America's long-term interest, because what makes a country powerful is ability to produce and sell to the world. Obviously, China is doing that more than the Americans, and so it's natural that we recalibrate. A measure America is currently doing now is to form alliances with other countries, like Japan and others, to see how they can reduce the Chinese threat. China, too, on its own ground, is also forming alliances. China is looking at Africa as the next world. Africa has about 35% of the total raw material needs in this world. And Africa is poor presently. So what China is trying to do is to see how they can come to Africa, put their tentacles, put their influences here, grow Africa to get to a certain point. Africa has about 1.2 billion population. If we're able to grow Africa, make Africa to get to that middle class status, then Africa will be the next market of the future. And if that is their plan, America also knows that that is what they are looking at. So America will also find a way to recalibrate their balance and find a way to shift investments to Africa and some other parts of the world.
All right.
For the long term.
All right. For the long term, and of course for the short term, I'm getting strong signals from the PD that I should call it a wrap on this discourse. Right now, it's not saying that China, they are up there. And of course, Donald Trump is doing everything possible to make sure that Americans, they are still very much relevant. With the current trade war on the ground, who do you think will suffer most? China or America, if they go all out?
Well, it's hard to predict what's going to happen. You know, both sides will hurt, no doubt. You know, and they have shocks absorbers such that you are not going to feel it. There will be short-term impact, long-term impact, and sometimes those impacts can be they just underplay them. They have a way of, especially the Chinese, of doctoring figures. So you probably may never know.
Doctoring figures?
Yes, you probably may never know what happened to the economy, because they don't want investors to panic. So they have a way around those things. So I don't think a lot happens. When they do that, is with a view to going back. They just want to force you to come back to the table and renegotiate some trade terms and extend some more economic favors to them. They're just rejiggling, basically. That's what they are doing to have a competitive advantage. That's all.
All right, thank you so much, Honorable Ehi Egareva. Briefly,
yes.
Destiny, very briefly, 30 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah. Who will hurt the most if they go all out? From what you said, both will hurt.
Both will be hot, definitely, because when two elephants fight, the grass will suffer, but sometimes the elephants themselves suffer because they are both big. Now, those two countries are the biggest sellers and buyers in the world. So if they fight each other, the whole world will suffer because they are the biggest buyers and sellers of anything produced. Other countries that we are yet to grow will not grow at all.
Because the two elephants are fighting.
Now, but we must look at it. It is not in their best interest to continue fighting, and because it will lead to both of them degenerating. So, in the long run, they must still sit at the table to find. They just want influence, so to redraw the parameters of exchange, so that they can sell products. So I think the fight is only just a rhetoric, but in the long run, it is their best interest to cooperate.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate your wonderful analysis. You taking a look at us, yes, via your tube, your country. How far have they gone economically speaking? What impact are really, giving out to the world on globalization? What is our impact? If you are there in Kenya, you are there in Egypt, you are there in South Africa, here in Nigeria, you just name it. How far have you been able to impact the world? China, just 40 years, from 60s to today, they've been up there. What about United Arab Emirates? Do they matter? The list just goes on and on. It's time for everyone to wake up to become relevant in globalization. Bye for now.